do me a favor, subscribe to my channel.
Alright, so first things first, get yourself your liquid test kit. I prefer API. API is my jam. Hey everyone, Kyle here from Poseidon's Pets. So what I want to do for you today is I'm going to show you guys how I do my water tests. So if you don't already, go out and get yourself a liquid test kit for your water parameters. So this test kit is something that you should have in your arsenal, because without this, you don't know really what's going on with your fish tank. So stick around and we'll get right to it. Wait 1 second. Do yourself a favor, hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell as well. That way you're notified of any future content I come out with. The 3 tests I'm going to be focusing on is the nitrate test, the ammonia test, and the nitrite test. So when you first set up your fish tank, what is happening inside that fish tank is something called the nitrogen cycle. So for the nitrogen cycle to be complete, your tank and the beneficial bacteria inside needs to be able to turn ammonia into nitrite and nitrite into nitrate. So inside this test kit, you're going to get a few other things. You're going to get a low range pH test as well as a high range pH test. And I will tell you, unless you are keeping delicate fish like discus and some other fish, pH doesn't really matter. So you don't want to chase pH. You don't want to try to go for an 8 when you have a 7. It's, yes, the fish are going to do better at those different pHs, but this is definitely more of an advanced step. And the best way to change your pH is to get water that already has that pH. Or start with RO water, which is basically stripped of everything. RO systems will take everything out of it, and then you can remineralize the water to what you want. So if you have watched any videos on shrimp keeping, you know that most shrimp keepers will use RO water and a remineralizer. This remineralizer is what's going to give this water the specific parameters that you need. So the reason why these 3 test kits are the most important out of everything is because this determines whether or not this water in here is safe for your fish to live. If you have high ammonia, if you have high nitrites, if you have high nitrates, that is going to affect your fish in ways that you do not want. High ammonia will kill your fish. High nitrite will kill your fish. High nitrates are going to stress your fish and cause them to get sick and probably die. So knowing your water parameters and how to fix those issues is number 1. Like beginner steps, number 1, you want to set up a fish tank, get something like this. This is how you know what you're doing is correct. Unless you bought your test kit off of somebody else, you're going to get an instruction manual. So this instruction manual, we don't need it. Just throw it away. I'm just kidding. This is a very important part of this whole thing. These instructions are very in-depth. This is science. This is chemistry. We need to know how many times do I got to shake this bottle? How many times do I got to shake this vial? This isn't just drip the colored liquid into the vial and see what happens. No, this is going to take a little bit of effort. If you don't read your instructions, none of this matters. Plus, it tells you how to read your tests on the back. Another thing you will need, some way to monitor time. So these tests are very precise, and they do need a certain amount of time frame schedule followed, and I'm going to go over that in a second. So now that I got my time device, now that I got my tests, I got my vials. So these vials, this is probably something that you are not used to. This does not come in the test kit. This was something that I purchased on Amazon separately because of how many vials are in here. Because I have multiple tanks, so being able to test each tank at the same time saves me so much time. These are the vials that they give you with the test kit. So if you look at it, this is just a little plastic stopper on here. I'm going to have to shake this. These are chemicals. I don't want these chemicals all over my hands. If I'm shaking this with this top, my hands are going to get covered in chemicals. I don't need chemical burns. They won't give you chemical burns, I promise. But it definitely does say avoid skin contact. So why would you give me something like this if I need to avoid skin contact when this leaks and gets all over my skin? Not cool. The other thing too is this is very thin glass. So I don't know what tapping does. I don't think that makes a difference. But the glass on this vial is very thin. So I have dropped multiples of these and shattered them. I've clinked them together and shattered them. This is solid. It's got a screw-on cap. I'm not gonna get no chemicals on my hands. I'm not gonna drop this and break it. I have dropped this from at least 3 feet onto my tile and it didn't break. I've also dropped it at 3 feet on my tile and it broke. So depending on how this falls on the ground, you have a better chance of this not breaking compared to the vials they give you. So this is definitely a plus, but it's not needed. It's not, well, I was gonna say not recommended, but definitely recommended. So to get started, what you wanna do is you wanna fill the vial to this line. Up to this line, that's 5 milliliters. So 5 milliliters of water per test. Now an easy way around this, because if you look at these vials, there's no line. There's no way of knowing how much water you're putting in this. So if you get yourself a medicine dropper with a syringe, you can add 5 milliliters to any container with a screw-on lid. So like I said, what I'm gonna do for you guys is I'm just gonna do these 3 tests here: ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate. This way you can see how to do these tests. I know the parameters in my tank are fine.
I know the parameters in my tank are fine. Parameters in my tank are fine. Parameters in my tank are fine.
So me doing these tanks doesn't help me any. This is all for you guys. So we got our 5 milliliters of water. We're gonna take a test tube and fill it with water. First things first, we're gonna do the ammonia test. So grab bottle number 1. Make sure, bottle number 1. Quick shake. Add 8 drops. Invert the solution completely vertical to assure uniformity of drops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Dang, my hands are shaky. Bottle 1. Done. Bottle number 2. 8 drops. Shake, shake, shake. Same thing. Upside down. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, this is a thinner solution than the first one, so this is going to come out a lot faster. You're going to have to squeeze this a lot harder than you squeeze this, so keep that in mind. Try not to mix the caps up because that can affect the solution. Make sure to seal it up afterwards. So ammonia test. Now that the cap is on, both solutions are in there, you're going to want to shake for 5 seconds. Make sure to do this. And that was about 8 seconds, just to be sure. So now this needs to sit for 5 minutes. So you want to set your timer. You want to get your timer going So that way you know when you started the first test. Nitrite solution, same thing. Give a little bit of shake. 5 drops. Completely invert. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put the cap back on. Lid's on. Oh no, I've been contaminated. 5 seconds. Same thing, we want to wait 5 minutes. So that took me a minute, so that test will be done at the 6-minute mark. So the nitrate test is one of the most important to follow the instructions. For the nitrate test, you're going to do 10 drops as well. I always just give it a quick shake. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You want to cap the test tube and invert it several times. So I usually just give it a quick shake. You want to make sure that solution is mixed up very well. Now for bottle number 2, this is one of the most important steps. This needs to be shaken for a minimum of 30 seconds. If you haven't used this test in a while or it's brand new, the best thing to do is to bang it on something hard repeatedly, because this chemical, there's crystals inside. If you don't break those crystals up and get them to dissolve into the solution, this test is going to come back false or give you a false reading. So you want to shake this for a minimum of 30 seconds. I usually bang it pretty good on my palm, on a table, whatever you have that you're not going to break it. I think that's good. So once again, 10 drops. Cap your solution and get rid of it. So the next step, this is just as crucially important. If you do not do this, you will get a false reading. You need to shake this for a minimum of 1 minute. We're at 4:44, well 4:50 now, but you want to shake it for that full minute. So we're at that 1 minute mark. Now, if you notice, if you time this correctly, these 2 tests are done. Now that has to sit for 5 minutes. So to keep it easy, stop, reset. When this is at 5 minutes, you're done. So this is our ammonia test. And if you look at it, we're at 0. So you want 0. If you are showing any ammonia at all, your beneficial bacteria in that tank is not doing what it's supposed to do. So either your brand new tank isn't finished cycling, or your beneficial bacteria in the tank isn't able to convert this ammonia to the nitrite and then to the nitrate. So if you're showing ammonia, something's wrong. You should do a water change and possibly look at your filtration to why you're having an ammonia spike. Now nitrites. Nitrites should be at 0 as well. If you're showing any type of nitrites, same thing as what I just said. Either your tank isn't finished cycling, or something has gone wrong to where your beneficial bacteria cannot turn your ammonia into nitrites, nitrites into nitrates. The best way to fix ammonia and nitrites in your aquarium is to do a water change. After the water change, you're going to dilute those levels down to where they're no longer harmful for your fish. Ammonia can be harmful in any range, so it's not good to have, as well as nitrite. If you're showing any ammonia or nitrite, your fish are going to be stressed, they can be hurt, they could die. So you don't want ammonia, you don't want nitrite. In a tank that has been cycled properly, you should see some nitrates. The only way you won't see any nitrates is if it's heavily planted or you do water changes often. Now, while we're waiting for the nitrate test to finish, I want to cover pH just a little bit. So there are ways to change the pH in your tank, but most creatures, most fish, most animals, they don't like pH swings. So you have a pH scale. Too high on the pH scale, you have acidic water. Too low on the pH scale, you have alkaline water. So pH stands for potential hardness in the water. Now we can go even more in depth with this and talk about GH and KH, which is general hardness, carbonate hardness, but a lot of it doesn't really matter unless you start getting into shrimp and start getting into other fish that require more specific water parameters. You can alter your pH by adding different substances like peat moss, driftwood, different tannin leaching materials, so dead leaves, alder cones, almond leaves. These things are going to affect the pH a little bit, or you could add like crushed coral. So crushed coral is going to help buffer it, so it's going to raise your KH and your GH and add to that general hardness to help kind of stabilize the water. If you don't have enough calcium in your tank, you may see a pH crash. This is something you shouldn't have to worry about unless you live in an area that has super soft water. If you have super soft water in your area, you probably want to get some crushed coral because that's going to help buffer that water. If you're not sure about your water, you can always test it, but the best thing to do is go to your local fish store, ask them about the tap water, ask them what they do to kind of buffer that water. A lot of times they're going to tell you, no, the tap water is fine, you're good, you don't need to change anything. So I did ramble for a little bit, but as I expected, I am showing no nitrates in this tank. So for a newly established aquarium, this could be a bit of a shock for you. If you're not showing any nitrates, then that means that your beneficial bacteria isn't turning the ammonia into nitrite into nitrates. This is a shrimp tank. All I have in here is shrimp and snails and plants. Plants love nitrogen. So nitrogen in any form, ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate, is all nitrogen. It's all the same chemical. It's just in different forms. We can go down the road of ammonium too, but let's not dive into that. Plants will absorb ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate. So the reason I'm not showing any nitrates in this tank is because I have floating plants. You see the roots coming down? Those plants are going to absorb all those nitrates, as well as these stem plants and the moss. So all of these plants are water column feeders. They're going to take those chemicals from the water column and use it to grow and become bigger. So having plants in your tank is really the best filter that you can have. Along with that, I also have a deep sand bed with a lot of dirt. So in this sand bed, there's denitrifying bacteria. This bacteria will take nitrates and basically break it down into nitrogen gas, so that way it's not in the water column anymore. Now this is definitely a little bit more advanced than just trying to make sure your fish aren't dying with ammonia. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment down below. I wanted this video to be simple. I wanted this video to be geared towards beginners. I can go down the chemistry lane of water parameters very in depth, and that is not something I want to do because more information is just going to confuse you. And I mean that in the most loving way. And if you want more information, I will definitely give it to you. But let's start here first. Let's get your ammonia under control. Let's get your nitrite under control. Let's get your nitrates under control. So that way you know your fish are living the best life they can. You're doing the best thing that you can for them. So say this wasn't at 0. Say this test came back in the 40s, in the 80s, in the 160s, off the chart. Say this test was ridiculously dark red, looks like Kool-Aid, you're thirsty. You got a problem. So a lot of times what that means is you're overfeeding or you haven't done any water changes. So there's a lot of conflicting information out there. You may find somebody who's like, oh, you don't need to do water changes. Water changes aren't necessary, blah, blah, blah. Don't get me started on those people. I understand where they're coming from because I don't have nitrates. I know the process. I know how it works. You try to tell a beginner that you don't need to do water changes, their tests are going to be coming back looking like Kool-Aid, and they're going to be like, why is my fish dead? Why is my fish sick? Why is this happening? Why? And it's because you haven't done a water change. Water changes are drastically important for your fish, for the health of your aquarium, because they remove nitrates. Not only that, fish create hormones. Fish create hormones that will prevent your fish from getting bigger. So if you ever see somebody who's like, oh, they only grow to the size of the tank. No, bro, you haven't done water changes, so it's living in this hormone that is just preventing its growth. So do your water changes, do your water tests. If you're not sure of how your parameters are, definitely keep up on it. Do a weekly test. Make sure you know exactly what is going on in that tank. If your filter can't convert the ammonia to nitrite to nitrate, you don't have enough filtration. As long as you have a good filtration, you do your water changes, your fish are gonna be fine. You know, you wanna do at least a weekly 10 to 20% water change in your aquariums. There's a lot of room for error, so the best way to stay on top of it is to know your water parameters. So if your nitrates are starting to get out of line, you need to do either larger water changes or more frequent. I wouldn't do less than once a week, 10%. Water tests, incredibly important. Know your water parameters, know how to fix them. If you have questions, if you need help, leave me a comment down below. Don't get caught flat-footed. Do your tests, do your water changes. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching. I definitely appreciate it. I hope you learned something today and you know how to use a freshwater test kit now, and you know what your water parameters are, and you know how to fix it. So if there's an issue, you can fix it. Your fish are gonna be happy. So thank you so much for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.